Welcome back, listener. Tonight, we're drifting slowly into the story of Foxy, the pirate animatronic Fox from Five Nights at Freddy's, a character who stands apart from the others, isolated behind a curtain in Pirate Cove, marked as out of order, who runs rather than walks, who seems more aggressive yet somehow more tragic than his companions, whose design as a pirate entertainer masks darker history, whose tattered appearance tells stories of violence and neglect, whose behavior across multiple games reveals patterns of loss and anger, and something that might be protectiveness or might be fury, depending on perspective, depending on which version of Foxy we're examining, depending on which layer of his story we're exploring as we settle into this long, gentle examination of one of FNAF's most iconic and mysterious characters. This is a complete exploration of Foxy's lore, from his creation as entertainment animatronic through his involvement in the missing children incident, through his possession by a murdered child, through his appearances across multiple games and timelines, examining his design and behavior and symbolism, understanding what makes Foxy different from Freddy and Bonnie and Chica, why he's isolated in Pirate Cove, what the out-of-order sign represents, how his mechanics reveal character, why he runs, what his tattered state suggests about his history, the theories connecting him to the Bite of 87, the child spirit within him whose name might be Fritz, the variations across games from Withered Foxy to Phantom Foxy, to Nightmare Foxy to Funtime Foxy and beyond, each version adding layers to understanding who Foxy is, what he represents, why he matters in FNAF's broader narrative. Whether you're discovering Foxy's story for the first time, letting familiar lore guide you toward rest, or simply allowing the exploration to wash over you as consciousness fades, this will carry you through everything we know and theorize about Foxy, the pirate animatronic who became something more, who represents isolation and damage and rage and perhaps redemption, who stands as one of FNAF's most complex characters despite or perhaps because of his relatively simple role in the original game. Just the fox behind the curtain, just the animatronic that runs down the hall, just Foxy, but what a story that simple description contains. What depths exist beneath that pirate fox exterior? What tragedy lives in those mechanical eyes? What child spirit animates that broken endoskeleton? Before we begin our journey into Pirate Cove, feel free to like and subscribe if you enjoy these deep explorations that unfold like gentle dreams. And let me know in the comments which FNAF character's story resonates most with you, which animatronics lore you find most compelling. It's always fascinating to see how different parts of this vast narrative connect with different listeners, which tragedies strike deepest, which mysteries prove most intriguing, which characters carry meaning beyond their mechanical forms. Let's begin this exploration of Foxy's complete story, understanding that we start not with the fox himself but with Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, with the restaurant that housed him, with Pirate Cove that became his stage, with the entertainment company that built him, with the purposes he was designed to serve before everything went wrong, before children were murdered, before spirits possessed animatronics, before Foxy became something other than what his creators intended, just a pirate fox meant to entertain children, meant to perform in his cove, meant to tell stories of adventure on the high seas, meant to be beloved character rather than horror icon, But FNAF's world doesn't allow innocence to persist, doesn't let entertainment remain pure, transforms joy into tragedy. And Foxy's story exemplifies this transformation, shows how something designed for happiness became vehicle for sorrow, how entertainer became haunted, how animatronic became possessed, how Foxy the pirate became Foxy the possessed, the broken, the isolated, the one behind the curtain, waiting, watching, preparing to run. Part 1. The Design and Purpose. Foxy as Entertainment, 1983 to 1985. As we begin this journey, as sleep starts to pull you deeper, let us travel back to the early 1980s, to the golden age of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, when the animatronics were new and shining, when children filled the restaurant with laughter, when Foxy performed in Pirate Cove for audiences of delighted kids, when his purpose was pure entertainment, when he was just a pirate fox telling stories, singing songs, engaging children with tales of adventure. Before the murders, before the possession, before everything that would transform him from performer into something darker. This early period when Foxy was what he was designed to be. Nothing more, nothing less, just an animatronic doing his job, fulfilling his programming, bringing joy to children who would never know, could never imagine, what he would become. The original design. Foxy the Pirate Fox. Foxy was designed as a pirate-themed animatronic, standing roughly 6 to 7 feet tall, built with reddish-brown fur covering, wearing brown pants, designed to look like Fox pirate character, his right hand being an actual hook prosthetic rather than a normal hand, adding to the pirate aesthetic, making him instantly recognizable, giving him character that distinguished him from the band members Freddy and Bonnie and Chica, who were musicians while Foxy was storyteller, entertainer of a different sort. His role being to perform in Pirate Cove, a separate area of the restaurant with curtains and stage dedicated specifically to his performances, giving him his own space, his own territory, his own identity apart from the main stage where the band performed. His design included several distinctive features beyond the hook. An eye patch covering his right eye, giving him classic pirate appearance, though this eye patch would become significant later when examining his damaged state, when understanding what the eye patch might be hiding. What damage might exist beneath that accessory that was originally just costume but potentially became necessity. His snout was elongated, fox-like, giving him predatory appearance that was softened in the original design by his entertainment purpose, by his role as friendly pirate telling stories to children, though that predatory appearance would become more sinister in later contexts when understanding that something predatory does inhabit Foxy, though not the animatronic itself but the spirit within it, the murdered child whose anger and confusion animate the mechanical fox. His endoskeleton, the mechanical structure beneath the fur covering, was standard for the era, similar to the other animatronics, built with servos and pistons allowing movement, with programming controlling his performance routines, with all the standard features that Fazbear Entertainment's animatronics possessed, though Foxy's programming apparently included more dynamic movement capabilities, more running, and active performance elements compared to the relatively stationary band members. This increased mobility being part of his entertainment value, part of what made Pirate Cove performances special, part of why children loved Foxy, the energy, the movement, the sense that this pirate fox could actually run and jump and perform physical comedy and action that the band couldn't match from their fixed positions on the main stage. Pirate Cove, Foxy's territory. Pirate Cove was a separate performance area within Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, distinguished by having curtains that could close between shows, giving Foxy privacy that the main stage animatronics lacked, creating space that was uniquely his, that children would gather around waiting for the curtains to open, for the show to begin, for Foxy to emerge and perform his pirate routines, tell his stories, engage his audience with the character he embodied, the pirate fox who presumably had adventures to share, treasure maps to display, sea shanties to sing, all the typical pirate entertainment that children in the early 1980s would enjoy, that would make Pirate Cove a popular attraction, that would make Foxy beloved character alongside Freddy and the others. The curtains of Pirate Cove become significant in understanding Foxy's story, because they represent separation, isolation, the ability to hide Foxy away when necessary, to close the curtains and make him disappear from view. And this capability would become important after whatever incident led to Foxy being put out of order. After whatever happened that made management decide Pirate Cove should remain closed, curtains drawn, Foxy hidden behind purple fabric, isolated from the restaurant, from the children, from the purpose he was designed to serve. The curtains transforming from theatrical device into prison, curtain, into barrier between Foxy and the world, into symbol of his isolation, his damaged state, his status as the one animatronic who isn't allowed to perform anymore, who's been removed from service, who waits behind those curtains growing more damaged, more tattered, more broken as time passes, and he's not maintained, not repaired, not given the attention that functioning animatronics receive. Foxy's entertainment role and personality. In his original purpose, Foxy was meant to be exciting, energetic, the animatronic who brought action and adventure to the restaurant, who complemented the band's musical performances with his storytelling and physical comedy, who appealed perhaps to children who found the band too sedate, who wanted something more active, more engaging, more dynamic than songs and birthday celebrations. Foxy providing that alternative entertainment, that different experience, his pirate persona allowing for different types of performance, different themes, different interactions with child audiences. The personality programmed into Foxy, the character he portrayed during performances, was presumably adventurous, bold, perhaps slightly mischievous in the way pirates are often portrayed as lovable rogues. Characters who break rules but remain fundamentally good, who seek treasure and adventure but ultimately do right by children. Protect them in stories. Teach them lessons about courage and friendship and standing up for what's right, the standard children's entertainment fare that animatronics existed to deliver. Wholesome content in mechanical package, designed to make children happy, to make them beg their parents to return to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, to make them fans of the franchise, consumers of merchandise, future customers who would bring their own children years later. The commercial purpose underlying all the entertainment, all the character, all the careful design work that created Foxy the Pirate Fox as marketable character, as beloved icon, as successful element of Fazbear Entertainment's brand. The early period, before everything went wrong. For some period, perhaps months or years depending on which timeline we follow, Foxy performed as intended, entertained children successfully, functioned properly, required only standard maintenance, was profitable attraction, was beloved character, was everything Fazbear Entertainment wanted him to be. This early period representing what Foxy was supposed to remain, what his existence should have been. Performer bringing joy, nothing darker, nothing tragic, just animatronic Fox doing his job, fulfilling his programming, serving his purpose in the ecosystem of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, where animatronics entertained and children celebrated and parents paid and the company profited. The cycle of commercial entertainment that defines the restaurant industry, that made Fazbear Entertainment successful, that created the empire that would eventually be haunted by murdered children. But in this early period, before the murders, before William Afton's crimes, before everything collapsed, Foxy was just Foxy, just a pirate fox, just an entertainer, innocent of the tragedy that would transform him, unaware that his mechanical body would become prison for murdered child spirit, that his friendly pirate character would become mask for something angry and broken and seeking revenge or justice or simply acknowledgement that they existed, that they mattered, that their death meant something. Let this beginning settle. As we pause in this early period, as sleep deepens around you, let the original Foxy settle into understanding, the entertainer before the tragedy, the pirate fox designed for joy, the animatronic serving his purpose, performing in Pirate Cove for audiences of children who loved him, who watched his shows, who begged their parents for Foxy merchandise, who played pretend as pirates because Foxy inspired them. This version of Foxy being what he should have remained, what he was meant to be, unmarred by murder, unpossessed by spirits, just mechanical performer doing mechanical things, following programming, entertaining children, the innocent beginning before the darkness, before the missing children incident, before William Afton's crimes touched Foxy, transformed him, made him vehicle for tragedy, made him part of FNAF's horror rather than just its entertainment backdrop. Rest now with this image of original Foxy, pirate fox behind curtains, waiting to perform, designed to bring joy, programmed for entertainment, existing in that brief period before everything changed, before children were murdered in the restaurant, before spirits began possessing the animatronics, before Foxy became what we know him as, broken and tattered and aggressive, running down halls, banging on doors, attacking night guards, the behavior of something possessed, something angry, something that was once a child, was murdered, was stuffed into Foxy's suit, spirit binding to the animatronic, transforming it from entertainment into something else, something tragic, something that was both Foxy, the pirate fox, and Fritz, the murdered child, or whatever name the spirit bore, the fusion of mechanical and spiritual creating the character we encounter in the games. But that's ahead of us in the timeline, ahead in this exploration. For now, we rest in the beginning, in Foxy's original purpose, in the entertainment era before the horror era, in the calm before the storm, in the innocence before the tragedy, knowing what's coming but not rushing toward it, letting the story unfold naturally, chronologically, building understanding layer by layer, the foundation being this original Foxy, entertainer, performer, beloved character. Before he became haunted, before he became horror, before he became the fox behind the curtain, isolated, broken, waiting with something like patience or something like rage. The distinction being unclear because possessed animatronics are complicated, are fusions of mechanical programming and spiritual possession, are things that don't fit neat categories, that exist in liminal space between machine and ghost, between entertainment and horror, between past and present, between what they were designed to be and what tragedy made them become. Part 2. The Missing Children Incident. Foxy's Transformation, 1985. As we continue through Foxy's story, as consciousness drifts further toward rest, we arrive at the pivotal moment that transforms everything. The Missing Children Incident. When 5 children were lured to a back room at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and murdered by William Afton wearing the Spring Bonnie suit. Their bodies hidden by being stuffed into the animatronic suits including Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, and Golden Freddy. Their spirits binding to these mechanical bodies, possessing them, transforming the animatronics from simple entertainers into haunted vessels. And one of those children, the one whose body was hidden in Foxy's suit, whose spirit possessed the Pirate Fox animatronic, is the key to understanding everything that Foxy becomes, everything he does in the games, every behavior that seems aggressive or violent being actually the actions of a murdered child seeking something, justice or revenge or acknowledgement, or simply trying to protect other children from suffering the same fate. The complexity of motivation that possessed animatronics exhibit making them more than simple monsters, making them tragic figures, victims rather than villains, though their actions toward night guards complicate this, blur lines between victim and threat, between justified anger and misdirected violence. The 5 children and their killer. In 1985, at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, 5 children went missing during birthday party or normal business day, the exact circumstances being somewhat unclear across different FNAF iterations, but the core event remaining consistent. 5 children were lured away from supervision by someone wearing a Spring Bonnie costume, taken to back room where surveillance didn't reach or was disabled, and there they were murdered, killed by William Afton, who wore the costume to gain their trust, to make them follow him, to get them isolated where he could kill them without witnesses, without interruption, without any chance of rescue. Afton's motivations for these murders being complex and never fully explained, possibly connected to his research into remnant and possession and life after death, possibly simply evil for evil's sake, possibly revenge for his own son's death in the bite of 83, possibly combination of all these factors. But regardless of motivation, the result was 5 dead children, 5 bodies that needed to be hidden, 5 murders that Afton needed to cover up. Afton stuffed the bodies into the animatronic suits, using Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, and Golden Freddy to hide his victims, the decomposing bodies inside the suits creating the smell and fluid leakage that would be noticed by day staff, that would contribute to the restaurant's eventual closure, that would make the animatronics malfunction, their endoskeletons being corrupted by biological material, their servos gummed up by decomposition. But more significantly, the murdered children's spirits didn't pass on, didn't move to whatever afterlife might exist in FNAF's universe, instead binding to the animatronics that held their bodies, possessing these mechanical shells, transforming them from simple robots into haunted vessels, into fusion of machine and ghost, into characters that exhibit behaviors beyond their programming, that move when they shouldn't, that attack adults, particularly security guards, particularly anyone in uniform that might remind them of their killer who wore a company costume when he murdered them. Fritz, the child in Foxy. Theory. The identity of the child possessing Foxy is less definitively established than some of the others, but evidence and theories suggest his name was Fritz, one of the 5 murdered children, whose body was placed in Foxy's suit, whose spirit bound to the Pirate Fox animatronic, whose personality and memories and trauma now animate Foxy's actions, making the animatronic behave in ways that reflect the child's spirit rather than just its programming, creating the unique behaviors we observe across the games, the running, the aggression, the isolation, all potentially reflecting aspects of Fritz's personality, or his death, or his spiritual state. The complexity of possession meaning that what we see when we encounter Foxy is fusion, is both mechanical animatronic with its programming and spiritual entity with its memories and emotions and desires. Fritz, if that is indeed the child's name, would have been perhaps 7 or 8 years old when murdered, young enough to be attracted by Spring Bonnie costume, young enough to trust an adult figure, young enough to be vulnerable, his life being cut short by Afton's violence, his potential erased, his future stolen, everything he might have been or done or experienced ending in that back room, in those moments of terror and pain before death, and then continuing in different form, in spiritual form, bound to Foxy, unable to move on, unable to rest, trapped between death and whatever comes after, existing in liminal state, possessing animatronic body, acting through mechanical systems, seeking something, though what exactly possessed children seek is debated, is unclear, might be revenge, might be justice, might be protection of other children, might simply be inability to understand their dead, inability to move past trauma, spiritual confusion that keeps them bound to the place of their death, to the animatronics that held their bodies, to the restaurant where they died. The possession. How spirits bind to animatronics. In FNAF's lore, the mechanism of possession seems to involve remnant, a substance connected to soul or spirit that can bind to metal, to animatronic endoskeletons, creating permanent connection between spiritual entity and mechanical body. The murdered children's remnant somehow attaching to the animatronics, making possession not temporary haunting but permanent fusion. The spirits becoming part of the machines in way that can't be easily undone, that persists even when animatronics are damaged or moved or modified. The possession being deep, fundamental. The spirits and animatronics becoming inseparable, creating the haunted characters we encounter in the games, characters that are both machine and ghost, both programmed entertainment and possessed entity, both following their original functions and acting on spiritual impulses, the complexity of this dual nature making possessed animatronics unpredictable, making them dangerous despite or because of the children's spirits within them. For Foxy specifically, the possession transforms him from entertainer into something protective or aggressive, depending on perspective. The spirit within him, Fritz or whoever the child was, animating the pirate fox in ways that reflect the child's spiritual state. The trauma of murder, the anger at death, the desire to protect other children or to attack adults who might be like the killer. The behaviors we observe in game being filtered through both Foxy's mechanical capabilities and the child's spiritual presence, creating the unique version of Foxy that runs down hallways, that becomes more aggressive when watched, that hides behind curtains, that seems somehow more active, more present, more individually characterized than some other animatronics, the possession giving Foxy personality beyond programming, making him more than just robot following instructions, making him vehicle for child spirit expressing itself through mechanical body, through pirate fox form, through the only means available to a ghost bound to animatronic. The aftermath. Foxy, out of order. Following the murders, following the discovery of smell and malfunction, following whatever investigation occurred that couldn't prove murder but confirmed something was wrong. Foxy was taken out of service, marked as out of order, isolated behind Pirate Cove's curtains, no longer performing, no longer maintained properly, beginning the deterioration that would make him increasingly tattered, increasingly damaged, his fur wearing away in patches, his endoskeleton becoming visible in places, his mechanical parts degrading from lack of maintenance, Foxy becoming more obviously broken, more visibly damaged, his appearance reflecting his state, the out-of-order sign becoming permanent fixture, becoming symbol of his isolation, his abandonment, his status as the animatronic that doesn't work anymore, that can't be trusted, that's been removed from the entertainment rotation. The reason for Foxy being singled out for out-of-order status while the others continue performing is never explicitly stated, but theories abound. Perhaps Foxy's increased mobility made his possession more obvious, his behaviors more clearly wrong, his movements more unsettling to staff or customers. Perhaps the spirit within Foxy was more aggressive, more difficult to manage, more likely to cause incidents. Perhaps Foxy's suit was more damaged by the body hidden within it, more obviously compromised, harder to clean and maintain. Perhaps it was arbitrary, just one animatronic needing to be removed and Foxy being chosen. Regardless of reason, the result is that Foxy spends years behind those curtains, isolated, degrading, the spirit within him trapped in broken mechanical body, unable to perform, unable to interact with children in the way he was designed to, unable to do anything except wait behind curtains, watch through the gap, prepare for those moments when he can run, when he can move, when he can act on whatever impulses the possession creates, protective or aggressive or simply confused. The bite of 87 theory, Foxy's possible involvement. One of FNAF's most famous mysteries is the bite of 87, mentioned in the first game as incident where animatronic bit someone's frontal lobe, the victim surviving but being severely injured. This incident causing animatronics to be restricted from moving during the day, causing increased scrutiny and ultimately contributing to the franchise's problems. And many theories connect Foxy to this incident, suggesting that he was the animatronic responsible for the bite, that his aggressive behavior, his out-of-order status, his isolation in Pirate Cove, all connect to him having attacked someone, having bitten them, having caused incident serious enough to fundamentally change how animatronics were managed. Though this theory has never been definitively confirmed, remains speculation, remains one possible explanation among several for both the bite of 87 and Foxy's damaged state. If Foxy was responsible for the bite of 87, it would explain his isolation, his out-of-order status, his being kept behind curtains rather than destroyed or scrapped. Management perhaps recognizing that destroying him would raise questions, would create problems, would cost money. Easier to simply mark him as broken, keep him behind curtains, claim he'll be repaired eventually while actually just letting him deteriorate in storage. The bite incident making Foxy too dangerous to use but not quite justifying his destruction, creating the limbo state where he exists in the first game, broken but present, isolated but not removed, waiting behind curtains while the restaurant operates around him, while the other animatronics continue performing, while Foxy remains the one who's different, who's separate, who's marked as not working. The out-of-order sign being both literally true, he doesn't function properly, and metaphorically significant. He's outside the order, outside the system, outside the normal operation of the restaurant, isolated, alone, broken. Rest in this transformation. As the section concludes, as sleep deepens further, let the transformation settle over you, understanding that Foxy changed from entertainer to haunted animatronic in 1985, that a child named Fritz or another name was murdered and stuffed into his suit, that Spirit possessed the mechanical body, that Foxy became fusion of Pirate Fox programming and murdered child spirit, that he was marked out of order and isolated behind curtains, that he deteriorated from lack of maintenance, that he possibly bit someone in 1987, that he spent years in this liminal state, broken but not destroyed, haunted but not acknowledged, the transformation being complete, being irreversible, Foxy never returning to his original purpose, never being just entertainer again, always being possessed, always being vehicle for child spirit, always being something other than what he was designed to be. The tragedy being not just in the child's murder, but in the continued existence, the spiritual imprisonment, the binding to mechanical body that can't die, can't rest, can only wait behind curtains, watch through gaps, prepare to run when opportunity presents, to act on impulses that might be protective or aggressive or simply the confused actions of traumatized child spirit trying to exist in world that no longer make sense, trying to interact through mechanical body, trying to understand what happened, why they're still here, what they're supposed to do now that they're dead but not gone, possessed but not alive, existing in state that shouldn't be possible but is, thanks to Remnant, thanks to possession mechanics, thanks to FNAF's particular version of haunting, where murdered children bind to animatronics and continue existing in mechanical shells, unable to move on, unable to rest, unable to do anything except act through their possessed vessels. And for Fritz in Foxy, that means waiting behind curtains, preparing to run. The pirate fox becoming something different, something tragic, something that was both child and machine, both victim and threat, both sympathetic and dangerous, the complexity making Foxy one of FNAF's most interesting characters, one of its most layered, one of its most meaningful. Despite his relatively simple mechanics in the first game, just the fox who runs, just Foxy. But what depth exists in that simplicity? What story lives in that running form? What tragedy animates those mechanical limbs? Part 3. FNAF 1, The Classic Foxy Experience, 1993. As we arrive at the first game, as sleep carries you deeper into dreams, we encounter Foxy as players first experienced him, as the animatronic behind the purple curtains in Pirate Cove, the one who's different from the others, who doesn't appear on cameras the same way, who has unique mechanics, who runs down the West Hall, whose behavior is affected by how much you watch him, creating gameplay that's distinct, that requires different strategy, that makes Foxy memorable, makes him stand out, makes him one of the most iconic characters in FNAF despite or because of his broken state, his isolation, his unique approach to attacking the night guard, the running, the banging on the door, the screamer if he gets in, all of it creating experience that's pure Foxy, that defines the character in player consciousness, that establishes who Foxy is in the game that started everything. Pirate Cove and the Purple Curtains. In FNAF 1, set in 1993, Foxy resides in Pirate Cove, a separate area from the main dining area, isolated behind purple curtains that remain closed. The out-of-order sign visible on camera 1C. Foxy himself not immediately visible, hidden behind those curtains, the first stage of his progression being just the sign, just the closed curtains, giving no indication of what's behind them, what's waiting there, what will eventually emerge when conditions are right, when the night guard makes mistakes, when Foxy decides or the spirit within him compels him to run, to attack, to attempt to reach the office and jump scare the player. The journey from Pirate Cove to the office being his primary mechanic, his defining behavior, what makes Foxy Foxy in the context of this game. The curtains themselves are significant, are part of Foxy's character, are the barrier between him and the world, and as night progresses, as player watches or doesn't watch camera 1C, the curtains change. Foxy's progression becoming visible in stages. First, just closed curtains with the sign, then curtains partially open with Foxy peeking out, his face visible, his yellow eyes glowing in the darkness behind the curtain. Then curtains fully open with Foxy standing on the stage, fully visible, ready to run, and finally empty stage, curtains open but Foxy gone, meaning he's left Pirate Cove, meaning he's in the West Hall, meaning he's coming, meaning the player has very limited time to close the left door before Foxy arrives, before he attacks, before the night ends in failure and screaming Fox animatronic. The mechanics. How Foxy works. Foxy's mechanics in FNAF 1 are unique among the animatronics, requiring different approach, different strategy, different understanding, making him feel distinct, making gameplay around him interesting, making players develop specific techniques for managing the Pirate Fox. And understanding these mechanics helps understand the character, because how Foxy behaves in gameplay terms reflects aspects of his possession, his nature, what drives him, the mechanics being not just arbitrary game design but reflecting character through gameplay, making Foxy's behavior in-game connected to Foxy's story and lore, the two aspects reinforcing each other, creating cohesive character that works both mechanically and narratively. Foxy becomes more active when the player doesn't watch Pirate Cove's camera enough, when camera 1C is neglected, when attention is focused elsewhere, this being unique among animatronics who typically become more aggressive when watched. Foxy working inverse, requiring periodic checking, requiring the player to look at him, to acknowledge his presence, to give him attention. Even though looking at most cameras makes other animatronics move. Foxy, needing to be watched or he becomes aggressive, progresses through his stages, eventually leaves Pirate Cove and runs toward the office. The inversion of typical gameplay creating interest and dynamic, creating strategic tension about when to watch which cameras, how to balance monitoring Foxy against avoiding triggering other animatronics. When Foxy runs, when he leaves Pirate Cove and sprints down the West Hall, there's audio cue, distinctive sound of running footsteps, rapid metallic clanging that indicates Foxy is moving, is coming, giving player audio warning to close the left door to prevent his entry. Though, if the player is looking at cameras when Foxy runs, they might not hear the audio cue clearly, might miss the warning, might open cameras to find camera 2A, showing West Hall corner with Foxy frozen mid-run, distinctive image of tattered Pirate Fox sprinting toward the office. One of FNAF's most iconic images, Foxy in motion, captured on security camera, frozen in moment of aggression, of pursuit, of the spirit within him driving the mechanical body toward the night guard, toward someone in uniform, toward the office where security sits. And whether Foxy is attacking because he thinks the guard is threat, or because the guard reminds the possessing spirit of their killer who wore uniform, or because possession makes animatronics aggressive toward adults in general, is open to interpretation, is never explicitly explained, leaving room for theories, for understanding, for different perspectives on what drives Foxy, what motivates him, what the child's spirit within him seeks through these attacks. The attack, Foxy at the door. If the player doesn't close the left door in time, if Foxy reaches the office before the barrier is in place, he appears at the doorway and performs unique attack animation, banging on the door frame rather than immediately jump-scaring. 3 heavy metallic bangs as Foxy strikes the doorframe with his hook. This distinctive behavior being different from other animatronics who simply appear and jump scare. Foxy giving warning, giving audio cue of his presence, the banging being aggressive but also somehow restrained, like he's announcing himself, like he's giving the guard one last chance. Like the spirit within him is conflicted about attacking. Like maybe Fritz doesn't want to hurt people, but the possession compels certain behaviors, makes aggression inevitable, creates situations where Foxy attacks despite or because of the child's spirit. The complexity of a possession making motivations unclear, making Foxy's behaviors interpretable in multiple ways. After the 3 bangs, if the player doesn't respond correctly, doesn't do anything, or does the wrong thing, Foxy delivers his jump scare, leaping into the office, Mechanical Fox filling the screen, his damaged face with its exposed endoskeleton clearly visible, his hook raised, his jaw open, the scream sound effect playing. The night ending in failure, the player being shown pink slip indicating they've been attacked, the game continuing if it wasn't final night. Foxy's attack being survivable in terms of continuing the game, though obviously fatal for the in-universe night guard, the gameplay and narrative not quite aligning, because gameplay requires allowing players to continue after deaths. While narrative suggests these attacks are lethal, are animatronics killing guards? Are possessed machines doing what the spirits within them compel? Protecting their territory, attacking perceived threats, acting on trauma and anger and confusion that possession creates. If the door is closed before Foxy arrives, the player hears a different sound. Foxy banging on the closed door, frustrated, unable to enter, eventually leaving, returning to Pirate Cove to reset his cycle. Though this successful defense comes with cost, Foxy's attacks on the door draining significant power. 1 per bang. 6 total for a full attack on closed door, making Foxy expensive to defend against, making him a drain on resources, making proper camera management crucial because letting Foxy attack repeatedly, even unsuccessfully, depletes power faster than almost anything else in the game, can lead to power outage, can cause game over through different mechanism. Foxy's presence creating pressure even when successfully managed, creating resource drain that affects entire night's strategy, making him constant consideration, constant concern, constant element that must be managed or he makes everything else harder, makes survival less likely, makes power management more critical. Foxy's appearance, the tattered pirate. Visually, Foxy in FNAF 1 is notably damaged compared to his presumed original state. His costume is tattered, torn in multiple places, exposing endoskeleton beneath. His fur patchy and worn, his mechanical parts visible through gaps in the covering, creating appearance that's distinctly broken, distinctly abandoned, distinctly of something that hasn't been maintained, that's been left to deteriorate, that's been marked out of order and then ignored, allowed to decay while the restaurant continued operating around him. The other animatronics receiving at least minimal maintenance while Foxy received none, or minimal, or only enough to keep him from completely falling apart. The result being the tattered pirate we see in game, damaged but functional, broken but mobile, looking like he's falling apart but still capable of running, of attacking, of moving with speed that his damaged appearance wouldn't suggest. The spirit within him perhaps compensating for mechanical damage, perhaps animating the broken body through supernatural means, perhaps keeping Foxy functional despite deterioration that should make him immobile. His right eye is missing or damaged behind the eye patch. His left eye functioning, glowing yellow in the darkness, tracking movement or seeming to. Looking out from Pirate Cove with awareness that seems beyond programming, beyond mechanical capability, suggesting the spirit within, suggesting Fritz watching through Foxy's eye, seeing the night guard, recognizing them as adult, as potential threat, as someone in uniform like the killer wore. The possession making Foxy more than robot, making him vehicle for conscious entity, for murdered child seeing through mechanical eyes, interpreting world through broken animatronic senses, acting on impulses filtered through both spiritual nature and mechanical limitations, creating the behaviors we observe, the watching, the waiting, the eventual running when conditions are right, when the spirit decides or the programming triggers or some combination of both causes Foxy to leave his cove, to sprint down the hall, to attack. His hook, his signature feature, is prominent in every appearance, raised in attack position during jump scare, used to bang on doorframe when he reaches the office, the hook being distinctly weapon-like, being more threatening than the other animatronics' hands, giving Foxy unique silhouette, making him immediately recognizable even in darkness, even in quick glimpses on cameras. The pirate aesthetic with the hook and eye patch creating character that's distinct, that stands out, that captures imagination despite or because of the damage, despite or because of the isolation, despite or because of being the one animatronic that's broken, that doesn't work properly, that's been abandoned behind curtains, the visual design communicating story, communicating status, communicating that Foxy is different from the others in ways beyond just mechanics, in ways that reflect his unique position in the restaurant's hierarchy, being separate, being isolated, being the one who doesn't perform anymore, who waits behind curtains, who emerges only to run toward the office, to attack the night guard, to act on whatever impulses drive possessed animatronics. The symbolism, what Foxy represents. In FNAF 1, Foxy represents several things simultaneously, his character carrying multiple layers of meaning, operating on multiple levels, being both literal haunted animatronic and symbol of broader themes. The isolation behind curtains representing how victims are hidden, how abuse happens out of sight, how damage is concealed behind barriers. The out-of-order sign representing how broken things are labeled and then ignored rather than fixed or removed, how problems are acknowledged but not addressed, how systems mark something as non-functional but leave it in place, leave it to deteriorate, leave it to become more broken over time. Foxy's visible damage, representing trauma that can't be hidden, that shows through despite attempts to conceal it, that makes obvious something is wrong, that this animatronic has history, has suffered, has been harmed. The tattered fur and exposed endoskeleton being physical manifestation of damage that goes deeper. That's spiritual. That's the trauma of murdered child possessing this mechanical body. His running represents urgency, perhaps, or aggression, or inability to contain emotion, the spirit within him unable to move slowly, unable to approach carefully, bursting from Pirate Cove in sprint, covering distance rapidly, attacking with speed that contrasts with the other animatronics' more methodical approach. Foxy being kinetic, being energetic even in damage, even in deterioration, retaining some essence of his original performance energy but twisted, redirected toward attack rather than entertainment. The pirate fox who once ran to delight children now running to attack adults. The same movement repurposed, the same speed used differently. The tragic transformation of purpose, of function, of existence, from bringing joy to causing fear, from entertainment to horror, the journey that all the animatronics make but which Foxy exemplifies particularly clearly because his movement is so distinctive, so different from the others, so obviously wrong when directed toward attack, so clearly twisted from original purpose. Let this classic experience rest. As this section concludes, as sleep pulls deeper, let the FNAF 1 experience of Foxy settle into memory. The purple curtains and out-of-order sign, the progression from hidden to peeking to ready to running. The distinctive audio of footsteps in the West Hall. The banging on door frame. The jump scare showing damaged face and raised hook. The power drain from blocking his attacks. All the mechanical elements that make Foxy unique, that make him memorable, that make him one of FNAF's most iconic characters, combined with understanding what he represents, who he is beyond the mechanics, the murdered child possessing Pirate Fox animatronic, Fritz or whoever the spirit was, trapped in Foxy's deteriorating body, acting through mechanical systems, attacking night guards for reasons that might be protective or aggressive or confused, the spirit's motivations being unclear but their presence being certain, Foxy being definitely possessed, definitely haunted, definitely more than just malfunctioning robot, the mechanics and lore combining to create character that works on multiple levels, that's engaging as gameplay challenge and meaningful as narrative element, that represents how FNAF at its best combines mechanical systems with storytelling, creating characters that function as both game elements and story elements, being both challenges to overcome and tragedies to understand, both threats and victims, both monsters and children, the duality making them complex, making them interesting, making them resonate beyond simple, horror beyond jump scares and survival gameplay into territory of meaning, of symbolism, of characters that carry significance beyond their immediate function. And Foxy exemplifies this, being simple mechanically, just the animatronic who runs, but complex narratively, being possessed pirate fox containing murdered child spirit, being isolation and damage and twisted purpose, being entertainment transformed into horror, being all of these things simultaneously, making him rich character despite or because of his mechanical simplicity. Depth emerging from the combination of gameplay and lore, of what Foxy does and what Foxy means. The two aspects inseparable, reinforcing each other, creating the complete character that players remember, that fans love, that has become one of FNAF's most enduring and iconic figures. Part 4, Across the Games, Foxy's Many Forms, 1987, 22, and 23, continuing through Foxy's appearances across multiple games. As we continue this exploration, as sleep deepens toward dreams, we must examine how Foxy appears across multiple FNAF games, each iteration adding layers to his character, revealing new aspects of his story, showing different versions or different contexts, Withered Foxy and Phantom Foxy and Nightmare Foxy and Funtime Foxy and Rockstar Foxy and more. Each variation being distinct, being its own character in some ways, while also being fundamentally Foxy, being the pirate fox in different forms, different states, different timelines, the multiplicity of Foxys creating complex picture, creating understanding that requires examining each appearance, understanding how each version contributes to overall character, how each iteration reveals something new, something that helps complete the picture of who Foxy is, what he represents, how his story unfolds across FNAF's sprawling timeline. FNAF 2, Withered Foxy, 1987. In FNAF 2, set in 1987 before the first game chronologically, we encounter Withered Foxy, the earlier version of the Foxy we know from FNAF 1, before the full deterioration, though already damaged, already showing signs of the decay that would worsen over subsequent years. Withered Foxy, residing in the parts service room, along with the other withered animatronics, old models being replaced by new toy animatronics, old Foxy and his companions being kept for parts, being relegated to storage, being the previous generation that the restaurant is moving beyond, though they remain active at night, remain possessed by the same spirits that would possess them in later games, remain dangerous to the night guard despite their deactivated status. Withered Foxy's appearance shows him already damaged, but less so than FNAF 1. His suit more intact, though still showing wear. His endoskeleton more concealed, though still visible in places. His deterioration being in progress rather than complete, showing that the decay from FNAF 1 was accumulated over years, was result of prolonged neglect rather than sudden damage, the timeline of his breaking being visible across games, being traceable from relatively intact in FNAF 2 to heavily damaged in FNAF 1, the 6 years between 1987 and 1993, being years where Foxy received minimal maintenance, where damage accumulated, where deterioration progressed, where out-of-order status meant being left to decay. The withered version being earlier in this process, being damaged but not yet fully broken, still recognizable as the pirate fox he was designed to be while showing signs of becoming the tattered horror he would be in the first game. His behavior in FNAF 2 is different from FNAF 1, no longer requiring camera monitoring to keep him at bay, instead being one of the animatronics who approaches through the hallway, who must be repelled by putting on the Freddy mask, who treats the guard as potential victim unless fooled by the disguise. The mechanical differences reflecting different context, different gameplay needs, different point in timeline when behaviors might be different, when possession patterns might not yet be established, when the spirits within the animatronics might still be learning how to animate their mechanical bodies, how to move, how to attack. The behaviors in FNAF 2 being arguably more primitive, more basic, being earlier in the possession timeline when spirits and animatronics are still learning to function together, still figuring out their existence as haunted machines. FNAF 3, Phantom Foxy, circa 2023. In FNAF 3, set 30 years after Freddy Fazbear's Pizza closed, in the horror attraction Fazbear's Fright that uses salvaged animatronic parts and memorabilia, we encounter Phantom Foxy, hallucination or ghost or manifestation of the spirit that once possessed Foxy, appearing as burned, greenish version of the pirate fox, attacking through jump scare that doesn't end the night but instead disables systems, creates ventilation errors, makes survival more difficult. Phantom Foxy being non-corporeal, being image rather than physical animatronic, being manifestation of memory or trauma or spiritual presence that haunts the location. Even though the original animatronics are destroyed or scattered, even though Foxy's physical body doesn't exist anymore in functional form, the spirit or echo of it remaining, appearing to torment the night guard, appearing to interfere with the horror attraction's operation, appearing because FNAF 3's environment is saturated with remnant, with memories of trauma, with the spiritual residue of everything that happened at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Phantom Foxy's appearance is distinct, the burn damage suggesting connection to FNAF 3's fire ending, suggesting that the phantoms might be manifestations of the animatronics' destruction, of their burning, of trauma associated with fire that ended Fazbear's Fright and supposedly freed the spirits, though that's complicated, the phantoms perhaps being echoes that remain even after supposed liberation, fragments of possession that persist, memories burned into the location itself, spiritual imprints that manifest as hallucinations, as phantoms, as non-physical threats that affect the environment rather than directly attacking. The difference being significant, being development in how FNAF handles its possessed animatronics, moving from physical threats to psychological spiritual ones, from mechanical beings to manifestations, from corporeal to ephemeral. FNAF 4, Nightmare, Foxy, 1983. In FNAF 4, in the nightmare sequences that might be dreams or might be something else, we encounter Nightmare Foxy, terrifying version of the pirate fox, hyper-aggressive, with exaggerated features, sharp teeth more prominent, claws more vicious, appearance more overtly monstrous than any previous Foxy, existing in the nightmare realm where a child experiencing trauma after the bite of 83 dreams of animatronics as monsters, as threats, as embodiments of fear. Nightmare Foxy taking the pirate fox concept and amplifying it into pure horror, removing any remaining traces of entertainment purpose, being only threat, only monster, only terror given Fox pirate form. Nightmare Foxy operates from the closet in FNAF 4, replacing plush Foxy that sits on the bed during early nights. The transformation from friendly plush to nightmare monster, representing how trauma transforms perception, how things that should be comforting become threatening, how animatronics designed for children's entertainment become sources of horror after the bite, after the child witness or experiences violence, after innocence is lost and Freddy Fazbear's characters can never again be just entertainers. Being forever associated with pain and fear and trauma, Nightmare Foxy embodying this transformation, being the pirate fox as monster, as nightmare, as manifestation of post-traumatic stress, as a symbol of how violence changes everything, ruins everything, makes safe things dangerous, makes entertainment into horror, makes Foxy into Nightmare Foxy, the ultimate bad dream version of the character, the amplification of everything threatening about him, the removal of everything comforting or entertaining or sympathetic. His mechanics involve the closet and flashlight, the player needing to check the closet periodically, to shine light and close the door when Nightmare Foxy is present. The gameplay reflecting childhood fears of monsters in closets, of things hiding in dark spaces, of needing light to feel safe, but light also revealing what's actually there. The tension between wanting to know and preferring ignorance, between checking and avoiding. The psychological horror of FNAF 4 being different from previous games, being more personal, more grounded in childhood experience even if exaggerated, even if featuring impossible nightmare monsters. The emotional core being relatable, being fear of the dark, fear of closets, fear of animatronics after traumatic experience. Nightmare Foxy representing all of this, being the monster in the closet, being the thing that shouldn't be there but is, being terror given form, given fox pirate shape, given aggressive purpose, existing to frighten, to threaten, to embody nightmares. Sister location: Funtime Foxy, 1983 to 1985. In Sister Location, in Circus Baby's entertainment and rental, we encounter Funtime Foxy, different lineage of fox animatronic, not possessed by murdered child from missing children incident, but rather being part of Circus Baby's group, built by William Afton for different purposes, designed to capture children, to facilitate Afton's crimes, being weaponized from the start, being sinister by design rather than becoming sinister through possession, though whether Funtime Foxy is possessed or not is unclear. Whether these sister location animatronics have spirits within them or operate purely mechanically is debated. The lore around sister location being more ambiguous, more complex, less clearly structured than the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza timeline. Funtime Foxy's design is sleeker than classic Foxy, more modern, more purposefully constructed, with pink and white color scheme, with more obviously artificial appearance, less attempt to look like friendly entertainment and more obviously mechanical, more overtly tool-like, reflecting the sister location animatronics' true purpose as child capture devices, rather than pure entertainment, though they maintain entertainment facade, maintain ability to perform and attract children. Funtime Foxy being capable of entertaining while also being dangerous, the duality being built into design rather than emerging from possession, being intentional rather than tragic, making sister locations animatronics different category of threat, different kind of horror, corporate conspiracy rather than vengeful spirits, designed danger rather than corrupted entertainment. Funtime Foxy's night in sister location involves navigating dark space using motion detector and controlled shocks to keep Funtime Foxy and Biddybabs at bay. The gameplay being unique, being focused on managing audio cues and limited information. The darkness being profound. The threat being invisible except on motion detector. Funtime Foxy approaching from different angles, requiring player to track movement through sound and sensors, to shock when appropriate, to survive through careful management of detection systems. The experience being tense in different way from earlier Foxy encounters, being technological horror, being about systems failing or being inadequate, about darkness hiding threats, about modern security measures being insufficient against animatronics designed to circumvent them. The many other Foxys across the FNAF franchise, multiple other Foxy variants appear, each adding something to understanding the character. Rockstar Foxy in FNAF 6. Updated version with more elaborate design. Pirate Bird Companion. More personality expressed through voice lines. The Rockstar line representing attempted rebranding. Attempted return to pure entertainment after years of horror, though still possessed, still dangerous, still carrying the trauma of the original characters. Glamrock Foxy mentioned but not appearing in Security Breach, being part of Glamrock band that performs in Pizzaplex. Modern iteration in modern facility, though his absence from the game itself is notable, might be significant, the space where Foxy should be but isn't representing something, representing absence, representing how some characters don't survive across all iterations, don't continue forever, are sometimes left behind. Various minigame Foxys, nightmare versions, phantom versions, twisted versions across multiple games and DLCs, each adding slight variations, each showing Foxy in different contexts, different forms, different states, the multiplicity creating picture of Foxy not as a single character, but as recurring element, as type, as the pirate fox that appears across timelines and universes and iterations. Always recognizable, always distinctly Foxy, always carrying core characteristics of isolation, damage, aggression, always being the fox behind the curtain or his descendants or his echoes, always being Foxy even when he's withered or nightmare or funtime or phantom or glamrock, the core character persisting through variations, understanding through iteration. Each version of Foxy reveals something about the character, about his design, about what makes Foxy Foxy across different contexts, the consistent elements being the pirate theme, the fox design, the sense of being separate or damaged or broken, the associations with running or speed or sudden attacks, the feeling that Foxy is different from the main animatronics, is in separate category, is the one who doesn't quite fit, who exists apart, who comes from Pirate Cove or equivalent isolated space, who emerges to attack rather than being constantly present like others, the pattern repeating across games, creating understanding that Foxy's character is fundamentally about separation, about isolation, about being the one who's different, who's broken, who's marked out of order or equivalent, who waits behind curtains or in closets or in darkness, who emerges suddenly, who attacks with speed, who represents something more urgent, more aggressive, more damaged than the others even when they're all damaged, all possessed, all dangerous. Foxy being distinctively so, being notably so, being the character whose isolation and damage are most prominent, most defining, most central to who he is. Rest in this multiplicity. As this section concludes, as sleep deepens further, let the many Foxies settle into understanding. Withered and Phantom and Nightmare and Funtime and Rockstar and all the others. Each being Foxy, each being distinct, each adding layer to the complete picture. The character being not a single animatronic but recurring element, pattern. The pirate fox who appears in multiple forms across multiple timelines, always recognizable, always carrying core traits, always being separated, damaged, aggressive. The one behind the curtain, the one who runs, the one who's different. Understanding Foxy requiring understanding all his iterations. Seeing how consistent elements persist, how character is maintained across variations, how the core of who Foxy is remains recognizable even when details change, even when timeline shifts, even when form transforms, always being Foxy, always being the pirate fox, always carrying the tragedy of murdered child possessing entertainment animatronic, or echoes of that tragedy, or variations on that theme, the fundamental story repeating, the fundamental character persisting. Foxy enduring across games, across years of releases, across evolution of FNAF's gameplay and storytelling, remaining relevant, remaining important, remaining one of the franchise's most iconic and beloved characters, despite or because of his isolation, his damage, his status as the one who's different, the one who's broken, the one behind the curtain, waiting to run, waiting to emerge, waiting to attack or protect or simply to be seen, to be acknowledged, to have his story told, his tragedy understood, his character explored in depth across all his forms, all his appearances, all his iterations, the complete picture of Foxy requiring examination of all versions, understanding how each contributes to the whole, how Withered shows his earlier state, how Phantom shows his spiritual echo, how Nightmare shows his manifestation as pure fear, how Funtime shows variation on his theme, how Rockstar shows attempted revival, how all of these Foxies together create understanding of the character in full, create complete picture of the pirate fox who's been part of FNAF since the beginning, who's endured through every iteration, who remains beloved despite or because of being broken, being damaged, being the one who's different, who's separate, who waits behind curtains before running toward the office, toward the player, toward whatever confrontation or attack or jump scare defines his role in each particular game. Part 5. The Spirit Within, Fritz's Story and Symbolism. Continuing with the possessed child's perspective. As we drift deeper into understanding Foxy, as sleep claims more of consciousness, we must examine the spirit within the animatronic, the murdered child whose possession transforms mechanical performer into haunted threat. Fritz, or whoever the child was, their identity being less certain than some other spirits, but their presence being definite, their possession being what makes Foxy more than robot, what gives him personality beyond programming, what creates the behaviors we observe across games, the running, the aggression, the watching from behind curtains, all potentially reflecting the child's spirit rather than just mechanical malfunction. Understanding Foxy requiring understanding Fritz, understanding the human element, the tragedy that underlies all the horror, the murdered child who never got to grow up, who died violently, whose body was hidden in animatronic suit, whose spirit bound to mechanical frame, who exists now as fusion of child and machine, human and fox, victim and threat. The complexity making Foxy tragic rather than simply monstrous, making him sympathetic despite or because of his attacks, making him character worth understanding in depth, worth exploring beyond surface mechanics. Fritz, the child behind the fox. If the child possessing Foxy is indeed named Fritz, as some evidence suggests, he would have been one of 5 children murdered in 1985 at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Lured to back room by William Afton wearing Spring Bonnie costume, killed there. His body stuffed into Foxy's suit to hide evidence, to dispose of corpse. His death being not even the primary goal, but simply necessary to Afton's purposes, whatever those were. Fritz being collateral damage, being victim of opportunity, being in wrong place at wrong time, being vulnerable child who trusted adult in costume, who followed when instructed, who believed he was being taken somewhere fun or special or safe, not understanding danger until too late, not realizing he was being led to his death. The innocence of childhood making him vulnerable, making him easy victim, making his murder possible. The tragedy being compounded by that innocence, by that trust, by the fact that he died believing adults were trustworthy, that company mascots were safe, that Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was place of joy rather than place that would facilitate his murder. Fritz's personality before death is unknown. We have no information about who he was, what he enjoyed, what his dreams were, what his family was like, all the details that make person real, that make death tragedy rather than just statistic, these details being absent, being lost, Fritz being defined almost entirely by his death, by his possession of Foxy, by what he became rather than what he was, the erasure being part of the tragedy, being part of what makes the missing children incident so horrible. Not just that children died, but that their lives are reduced to their deaths, their identities consumed by their roles as spirits possessing animatronics, Fritz being remembered primarily as the one who possesses Foxy, rather than as child with full life and personality and relationships. The death overshadowing everything that came before, the possession defining everything that comes after. The possession, Fritz becomes Foxy. When Fritz's body was hidden in Foxy's suit, when his blood and remnant came into contact with the animatronic's endoskeleton, something happened that bound his spirit to the mechanical structure, prevented him from passing on, trapped him in liminal state between death and whatever afterlife might exist. Fritz becoming bound to Foxy, his consciousness or soul or spirit, whatever terminology we use, becoming fused with the animatronic, creating entity that is both child and machine, both Fritz and Foxy, the duality being fundamental to understanding possessed animatronics. They're not simply ghosts operating robot bodies. They're fusions. They're combinations where mechanical and spiritual are intermixed, where programming and personality both influence behavior, where it's unclear where Foxy ends and Fritz begins, where boundaries blur, where the possessed, animatronic becomes new entity, neither purely machine nor purely spirit, but synthesis of both. Fritz's consciousness within Foxy would be confused, would be traumatized, would be trying to understand what happened, why he's dead but still existing, why he's bound to this mechanical body, why he can't move on, can't rest, can't find peace. The possession creating situation where child's spirit is imprisoned, trapped, unable to escape, forced to exist in state that shouldn't be possible, dead but conscious, gone but present, killed but persisting. the psychological and spiritual torture of this state being hard to fully comprehend. Being nightmare scenario where death doesn't bring peace but rather brings continued existence in mechanical prison, where the child must experience years or decades bound to animatronic body, must act through mechanical systems, must see through camera eyes, must move through servo motors, must exist in form that's profoundly wrong. That's violation of natural order. That's corruption of both death and life, being trapped between them, being neither dead nor alive, being possessed animatronic, being Fritz and Foxy, being fusion that should not exist but does, thanks to Remnant, thanks to FNAF's particular rules about death and spirits and possession. Foxy's behaviors through Fritz's eyes. Understanding Fritz's presence in Foxy helps explain behaviors that otherwise seem arbitrary or purely mechanical. The watching from Pirate Cove potentially being Fritz observing the restaurant, watching for threats, for danger, for someone who might be the killer. The spirit within seeking either revenge or protection, or simply trying to understand what's happening, why he's still here, what he's supposed to do. The watching being combination of Foxy's camera system and Fritz's consciousness using that system, looking out through mechanical eyes, seeing night guards in their office, seeing them as potential threats, as adults in uniform similar to what the killer wore. The association triggering aggressive response, triggering the decision to leave Pirate Cove, to run, to attack. The running, Foxy's signature behavior, might reflect urgency in Fritz's spirit, inability to move slowly, passion or aggression or fear driving the possessed animatronic to sprint rather than walk. The speed being characteristic of Foxy across iterations, being his defining trait mechanically, but potentially reflecting something about Fritz's personality or emotional state. The child's spirit being unable to be calm, being unable to approach cautiously, bursting forth when triggered, running full speed, attacking with energy that might be anger or fear, or simply inability to control mechanical body precisely. The possession being imperfect, being difficult. The child's spirit struggling to operate animatronic system. Achieving movement but not subtlety. Achieving attack but not restraint. Achieving action but not precision. The result being Foxy's characteristic sprint. Being the running pirate fox. Being the animatronic who moves differently from others because Fritz within him experiences possession differently, controls mechanical body differently, expresses his spiritual state through different behaviors. The banging on door, the distinctive behavior when Foxy reaches the office in FNAF 1, might be Fritz's spirit being conflicted, wanting to attack but also hesitating, wanting revenge or justice but also being child who doesn't truly want to hurt people. The three bangs being aggression mixed with warning, being attack mixed with restraint, being the complicated emotional state of murdered child operating mechanical body, trying to express things that mechanical systems aren't designed to express, creating behaviors that seem wrong, that seem off, that create sense of animatronic being possessed, being more than just machine. The banging being too intentional to be pure programming, too distinctive to be random malfunction. Being behavior that suggests consciousness behind it, suggests Fritz's spirit working through Foxy's mechanical systems to do something that's neither pure attack nor pure warning, but combination, complex behavior from complex emotional state. The isolation, Why Foxy is behind the curtain. Fritz's possession of Foxy might explain the isolation, the out-of-order status, the curtain barrier separating Pirate Cove from the rest of the restaurant. Perhaps Fritz's spirit is more aggressive than others, more difficult for management to ignore, more obviously wrong, leading to Foxy being removed from service, being isolated, being hidden away where he can't cause problems, can't upset customers, can't make obvious the fact that something is very wrong with this animatronic, that it moves when it shouldn't, that it behaves in ways that aren't programmed, that it seems almost aware, almost conscious, almost possessed, and rather than deal with this, rather than investigate or destroy Foxy, management simply closes the curtains, hangs the out-of-order sign, pretends Foxy is just broken, just needs repairs that will never come, just needs to be isolated until some undefined future point when he'll be fixed. The isolation being easier than confronting the truth, easier than admitting that something supernatural is happening, that spirits possess their animatronics, that murdered children haunt their restaurant. From Fritz's perspective, the isolation is prison, is punishment for being murdered, is decades behind curtains watching the restaurant operate without him, watching other animatronics perform, watching children enjoy themselves at the place where he died, being unable to participate, unable to move freely, unable to do anything except watch through gap in curtains, waiting for night when restaurant closes, when security guard arrives, when he can finally move, finally run, finally act on whatever impulses drive possessed animatronics, finally express the anger or fear or confusion that's been building during hours of isolation, of watching, of being trapped behind curtains unable to act, the nights being release, being opportunity, being the only time Fritz and Foxy can move, can run, can attempt whatever it is he's attempting, attack or revenge or protection or simply movement after being forced to be still, action after being confined, expression after being suppressed. The symbolism. Foxy as metaphor. Beyond literal story of Fritz possessing Foxy, the character carries metaphorical weight, representing how victims are isolated, how damage is hidden behind curtains, how those who are broken are marked out of order and then ignored, left to deteriorate rather than being helped or healed, Foxy's physical state reflecting emotional and spiritual damage, his tattered appearance being external manifestation of internal trauma, the exposed endoskeleton being skeleton that can't be hidden, being bones showing through, being death visible through entertainment facade, being reminder that beneath the pirate fox costume is mechanical structure, and beneath that is murdered child, and beneath that is tragedy that can't be hidden no matter how many curtains are drawn, how many out-of-order signs are posted, how much management tries to isolate and contain the problem. Trauma persists, damage shows through. Fritz's presence makes Foxy behave wrong, makes him seem possessed, makes him unable to function as pure entertainment because he's not pure entertainment anymore. He's crime scene, he's burial site, he's haunted memorial, he's the place where Fritz died and continues existing. The fusion of purposes making Foxy unable to be just animatronic, unable to be just Pirate Fox, always being more, always being both, always being Fritz and Foxy, victim and machine, tragedy and entertainment, the complexity being what makes the character work, what makes him meaningful, what makes him more than just mechanical threat. Rest in this understanding of the child. As this section concludes, as sleep deepens toward final rest, let understanding of Fritz settle over you, the child within the fox, the murdered boy possessing pirate animatronic, the spirit trapped in mechanical prison, the consciousness bound to Foxy's endoskeleton, unable to move on, unable to rest, experiencing decades of half-existence as possessed animatronic, watching from behind curtains, running when able, attacking when triggered, acting through mechanical systems that weren't designed for housing human consciousness, creating behaviors that reflect both programming and spiritual presence, both mechanical systems and emotional states, both Foxy's design purpose and Fritz's trauma. The fusion creating character that's complex, that's tragic, that's sympathetic despite being threat, that's victim despite attacking, that's child, despite inhabiting mechanical monster body. Understanding Foxy requiring understanding Fritz. Understanding that behind the jump, scares and running mechanics and pirate fox aesthetic is murdered child, is victim of violence, is person whose life was stolen, whose death was hidden, whose spirit was trapped, whose existence now is this half-life as possessed animatronic, this state of being Foxy, of animating the pirate fox, of running down halls and attacking guards and being the broken one behind the curtain. All of it being Fritz's existence now, being what his life became after it was taken, being what remains after murder, after possession, after binding to mechanical body, being Fritz in Foxy, being the spirit within the fox, being the human element that makes animatronic more than machine, being the tragedy that makes horror meaningful, being the child that makes monster sympathetic, being Fritz, being whoever the child was, being someone's son, being someone who had life and personality and future, all of it erased, all of it reduced to possessing Foxy, to being the spirit that makes Pirate Fox run, that makes him aggressive, that makes him different from pure programming. Being Fritz, eternal child trapped in tattered Pirate Fox, unable to grow up, unable to rest, unable to do anything except exist as possessed animatronic, as part of FNAF's horror, as part of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza's dark history, as Fritz in Foxy, forever. As we arrive at the end of this exploration, as sleep claims you completely, let us gather all the threads of Foxy's story, all the versions and behaviors and symbolism we've examined, weaving them into complete understanding of the Pirate Fox animatronic, who stands as one of FNAF's most iconic and complex characters, who represents isolation and damage and possession and tragedy, who is simultaneously mechanical performer, haunted vessel, game mechanic, and symbol, all these aspects combining to create character who resonates, who endures, who matters beyond simple jump scares, beyond gameplay mechanics, into territory of meaning, of story, of the human tragedy underlying FNAF's horror, the murdered children whose spirits possess animatronics, making them more than machines, making them vehicles for understanding how violence transforms everything, how death doesn't always bring peace, how trauma persists, how victims continue existing even when they shouldn't be able to, bound to mechanical bodies, acting through systems that weren't designed for human consciousness, creating behaviors that are part programming and part spiritual presence, part mechanical and part emotional. The fusion being what makes FNAF's animatronics work as characters, what makes them compelling, what makes them tragic rather than simply monstrous. Foxy as complete character. Foxy begins as entertainment animatronic, Pirate Fox designed to perform in Pirate Cove, to tell stories and sing songs and delight children with tales of adventure on the high seas. His original purpose being pure, being innocent, being what all the animatronics were supposed to remain. Just performers bringing joy, just machines serving their function. Nothing darker, nothing tragic. But then comes 1985, comes William Afton's crimes, comes the missing children incident, comes Fritz, or whoever the child was being murdered, being stuffed into Foxy's suit, his spirit binding to the animatronic, possessing it, transforming Foxy from entertainer into haunted vessel, from simple machine into complex fusion of mechanical and spiritual, from programmed performer into vehicle for murdered child's consciousness, the transformation being irreversible, being fundamental, being what makes Foxy into the character we encounter in the games. After possession, Foxy becomes different, becomes out of order, becomes isolated behind Pirate Cove's curtains, becomes the animatronic that doesn't work properly, that's been removed from service, that's deteriorating from lack of maintenance, his appearance becoming increasingly tattered, increasingly damaged, his mechanical parts becoming exposed, his fur wearing away, his body slowly falling apart because he's not being maintained, not being repaired, just being left behind curtains to decay. The years from 1985 to 1993, being years of isolation and deterioration, years where Fritz's spirit is trapped in mechanical body that's slowly breaking down, years where the curtains stay closed and Foxy waits, watches, exists in limbo between function and failure, between being animatronic and being junk, between performing and being scrapped. When we encounter Foxy in FNAF 1, we're encountering this complete package, entertainer and spirit, machine and ghost, programming and consciousness, all combined into the Pirate Fox who watches from Pirate Cove, who runs when conditions are right, who attacks when he reaches the office, his behaviors being part mechanical, part spiritual, part game mechanics, part character expression. Impossible to fully separate these elements because they're integrated, because Foxy is all of them simultaneously, is character who exists on multiple levels, who works as gameplay challenge and as narrative element, who creates tension through his mechanics and meaning through his story. The completeness making him effective, making him memorable, making him one of FNAF's most successful character creations. The Running Fox, understanding Foxy's signature. Foxy runs. This is his defining trait. This is what makes him Foxy across all iterations. The sprinting Pirate Fox, moving faster than the others, covering distance rapidly, attacking with speed and aggression that contrasts with the more methodical approach of other animatronics. And understanding this running requires understanding both mechanical and spiritual aspects, both programming and possession. Foxy's original design included more dynamic movement capabilities, more physical performance elements, making him capable of running as part of his entertainment routines, the mechanical infrastructure for speed being built into his design, being intentional, being part of what made Pirate Cove performances special, but the possession adds layer, adds urgency, adds emotional drive, Fritz's spirit using Foxy's mechanical capabilities to express something, anger or fear or determination or simply inability to move slowly, inability to be calm, the spiritual state demanding action, demanding movement, demanding expression through the only means available, through Foxy's mechanical systems, through running, through sprinting toward the office when triggered, the behavior being both mechanical capability and spiritual expression, both what Foxy can do and what Fritz needs to do, the fusion creating the signature behavior, the running pirate fox, the animatronic who moves differently because he is different, because he contains both machine and spirit, both programming and consciousness, both Foxy and Fritz. The running also represents escape attempt, perhaps. Fritz trying to break free from Pirate Cove's isolation, from the curtain barrier, from decades of being confined. When he runs, he's finally moving, finally acting, finally expressing the pent-up energy of being trapped, being isolated, being forced to watch without participating. The nights being release, being opportunity, being the time when Fritz and Foxy can finally run, can cover distance, can attempt to reach something, to achieve something, even if that something is just attacking Night Guard, even if the action is misdirected, even if the target is innocent, the running itself being important, being necessary, being release of tension that builds during isolation, during watching, during hours behind curtains unable to move, unable to act, unable to do anything except exist as possessed animatronic trapped in Pirate Cove. The running being freedom, being action, being the moment when Foxy is more than broken animatronic behind curtain, being active threat, being kinetic presence, being the sprinting fox that players remember, that fans love, that defines the character across iterations. The tragedy. What Foxy represents. Beneath all the mechanics, beneath the running and the jump scares and the out-of-order sign, Foxy represents tragedy, represents murdered child, represents victim of violence who can't rest, who's trapped between death and whatever comes after, who exists as possessed animatronic because his death was hidden, his murder was concealed. His body was stuffed into Foxy's suit to dispose of evidence, to hide crime, to facilitate Afton's escape. Fritz being collateral, being victim, being the human cost of William Afton's actions, whatever motivated them, whatever purpose they served. Fritz paid the price, died violently, became trapped spiritually, bound to Foxy, unable to move on, unable to rest, unable to be at peace, existing instead as haunted animatronic, as possessed machine, as fusion of child and fox, victim and entertainment, tragedy and horror. Understanding Foxy means understanding this tragedy, means recognizing that the jump scares are actually attacks from traumatized child spirit, means seeing that the tattered appearance reflects spiritual damage as much as mechanical deterioration, means comprehending that the isolation behind curtains is imprisonment of victim, means recognizing that every behavior, every movement, every appearance across games is expression of trapped child's consciousness operating through mechanical body, seeking something, revenge or justice or protection or simply acknowledgement, simply recognition that he existed, that he mattered, that his death meant something, that he's not just forgotten, not just hidden behind a curtain with out-of-order sign, not just dismissed as broken animatronic, but was person, was child, was Fritz, was someone who died and continues existing in form that shouldn't be possible, in state that's torture, in mechanical prison that he can't escape, being Foxy, being Pirate Fox, being entertainer transformed into horror, being tragedy wearing pirate costume. The endurance. Why Foxy persists. Foxy has appeared in nearly every FNAF game, has endured across iterations and timelines, has remained relevant and beloved, has persisted as one of franchise's most iconic characters, despite or because of his damage, his isolation, his status as the broken one. Something about Foxy resonates with players, with fans, with people who engage with FNAF's story, perhaps because his visible damage makes his trauma obvious, makes his victimhood clear, makes him sympathetic in ways that less obviously broken animatronics aren't. Perhaps because his isolation creates sympathy, creates desire to free him, to acknowledge him, to give him attention that his out-of-order status denies. Perhaps because his running creates drama, creates urgency, creates memorable gameplay moments. Perhaps because his pirate aesthetic is appealing, is distinctive, is immediately recognizable. Perhaps because his complexity as character, being both threat and victim, both monster and child, makes him interesting, makes him worth exploring, makes him more than simple horror element. Whatever the reason, Foxy endures, persists across games, remains beloved, remains relevant, remains one of characters that fans create art about, write stories about, theorize about, care about, the endurance being testament to character design, to successful fusion of gameplay and narrative, to creation of character who works on multiple levels, who serves game mechanics while carrying story weight, who creates challenge while inviting sympathy, who's horrifying while being tragic. The complexity making him resonate, making him meaningful, making him more than just jump scare, more than just gameplay mechanic, becoming character that matters, that people remember, that endures beyond any single game appearance, becoming icon, becoming symbol, becoming Foxy, the pirate fox, the broken animatronic, the one behind the curtain, the running horror, the possessed vessel, the murdered child in mechanical body. All of these things simultaneously, all of these aspects combining into complete character, who remains one of FNAF's most successful creations. Complete rest and understanding. You've journeyed through Foxy's complete story now, from his design as entertainer, through his transformation, through possession, through his appearances across games, through understanding the spirit within, through examining symbolism and meaning, comprehensive exploration of the pirate fox who's been part of FNAF since the beginning, who represents isolation and damage and possession and tragedy, who stands as example of FNAF's ability to create characters who are more than mechanics, who carry weight beyond gameplay, who matter as narrative elements, who express themes, who embody tragedy, who make horror meaningful by grounding it in human cost, in murdered children, in victims who continue existing, who can't rest, who's bound to mechanical bodies, creating the possessed animatronics that define FNAF's unique approach to horror, its particular fusion of mechanical and spiritual, of entertainment and tragedy, of gameplay and story. And now, with understanding complete, with Foxy's story fully explored, with every major appearance examined, with the spirit within acknowledged, with the tragedy recognized, you can rest, can sleep deeply, can let all of this settle into dreams, knowing that Foxy's story is told, Fritz's tragedy is understood, the pirate fox's complete lore has been explored, from beginning to present, from original design to latest iteration, from entertainer to possessed, from machine to ghost fusion, from innocent beginning to tragic persistence, the complete arc mapped, the full character understood. Nothing left unexplored, nothing left unexamined. The story complete. Final gratitude and release to sleep. Thank you for joining this exploration of Foxy, for allowing this deep examination of single character to guide you towards sleep, for spending these hours learning about the pirate fox, understanding his mechanics and meanings, recognizing his complexity, seeing him as both gameplay element and tragic figure, both threat and victim, both monster and murdered child. The duality making him rich character, making him worthy of this depth of exploration, making him suitable subject for this long, gentle examination that's been designed to inform while soothing, to explore while calming, to examine darkness while facilitating rest. Sleep now, completely, finally, deeply, far from Pirate Cove and running animatronics, far from possessed machines and murdered children, far from all the horror that makes FNAF compelling as fiction but would be nightmare as reality. Safe in your world where animatronics aren't haunted, where children aren't murdered in restaurants, where Foxy is character in games, is fiction, is safely contained in entertainment, is not real threat, is not actual tragedy, is story, is creation, is character to understand and appreciate and explore, but not to fear because he exists only in games, only in fiction, only in this examination that's guided you through his complete lore while facilitating your rest, your sleep, your drift into dreams that hopefully contain no running pirate foxes, no banging on doors, no jump scares or attacks, just peaceful rest in world where Foxy is fiction, where you're safe, where the comprehensive exploration we've completed tonight was gentle journey through dark story, thorough examination presented in calming manner, designed to inform while inducing sleep, succeeding if you're now drifting into deep rest, into peaceful unconsciousness, into dreams far from horror, far from tragedy, far from possessed animatronics. Good night, listener. Sleep deeply. Dream peacefully. Rest completely in understanding that Foxy's story is told, complete, explored from every angle, and that you've witnessed it all, understood it fully, can now simply rest knowing the pirate fox's tale is complete, knowing Fritz's tragedy is acknowledged, knowing the character has been examined thoroughly, comprehensively, with appropriate depth and respect for both the game mechanics and the narrative meaning. The complete exploration allowing complete rest, allowing final sleep, allowing you to drift away knowing everything about Foxy has been covered. Nothing remains unexplored, the story is told, the character is understood, the lore is complete, and you can sleep peacefully, far from Pirate Cove, far from running footsteps, far from all of it, safe in your world, blessed with distance from fiction, able to rest knowing that Foxy exists only in games, only in stories, only in this exploration that's now complete, releasing you to sleep, to dreams, to rest, that's deep and peaceful and complete, far from the pirate fox, far from the tragedy, far from everything except the comfort of your bed, and the safety of your world, and the deep, peaceful sleep that awaits you now, that welcomes you, that offers rest after this long journey through Foxy's lore, through his complete story, through understanding of character who's both simple and complex, both mechanical and meaningful, both gameplay element and tragic figure. The complete picture now assembled. Nothing left to explore, only sleep remaining, only rest, only peaceful dreams far from animatronics and horror, far from everything except comfort and safety, and the blessed knowledge that Foxy is fiction, that you're safe, that sleep is possible, that rest is deserved, that the exploration is complete. Sleep well. The Pirate Fox's story is told. You're safe. Good night.